Miura's, I don't know. Miura. Hey everyone, hi, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be discussing the first arc in the Berserk manga series. This is by, and apologize right up front because I have been known to butcher some pronunciation, but it is Kentaro Miura. So that is the author. I will also put the name, flashing it across the screen, who created Berserk. And yeah, I'm excited to talk about it with you all. I am going to talk about what led me to pick this up. I'm going to summarize the plot as best I can, and then I will also give you thoughts along the way. Can I promise that it's going to be exactly like that? No. I might meander a little bit as I do, but yeah. Anyhow, if you are new to my channel, then hello, welcome. My name is Shelly, and I really love books and reading, and lately I have been venturing into the world of manga. I have, at this point, started 4 long-standing or somewhat long-standing manga series, and I have just been really enjoying my journey with it. So Berserk is the next on the docket, and I don't know how many more I can juggle. So if you are interested in somebody talking enthusiastically about her life, her reading life in particular, I would encourage you to subscribe and stick around. One of the best ways to support my channel is by liking the video, subscribing, and I also have a Patreon in case you are interested in supporting me in that way. So without any further rambling on, let's go ahead and get into the meat of this video. And I'm going to change the battery. I really stumbled into my manga journey with very little intent or idea of what this entire world entailed. And I'm talking about all the art form, I just didn't know much about this whole universe that exists. That is the intersection of reading and words that originated in, I believe, Japan. And I really ought to read like a history of manga book just so that I know what I'm doing at this point. But I really, again, sort of stumbled upon it very naturally. So over the months, the few months that I've been reading manga, there's always been a conversation about, people always are suggesting in the comments of what I should read next, or if I like, and I've even solicited recommendations from you all. So it's always been this really lively discussion of, what is out there, what's worth it to read, what I ought to pick up next if I'm liking this kind of manga or this story or another. And I'm sure along the way somebody has mentioned Berserk. I'm certain of it because it is such a popular series. However, I didn't really know, I knew, or like I was aware of this manga out there, but I hadn't really thought about it very seriously until one of my friends picked it up. He was like, I got the second deluxe edition of Berserk, which starts at volume 4. It's like volumes 4 through 6, I believe. And so I was like, oh, well, if you're reading manga, like there's nothing better than reading something with a friend, like with somebody I really adore. And so I was like, I want to read that with you. And his response was, I don't know, it's like pretty dark and you might want to read some like trigger warnings before you pick it up. This is me. Well, how dare you say that I cannot handle it? I am going to start reading it right now. So I was so petulant and stubborn. I was like, I'm not going to read trigger warnings. I'm going to just jump right in. How dare you think I cannot read it? And so out of my own defiance, I just found an edition of Berserk, the first volume. I downloaded it and I started reading that night. That probably tells you way too much about my personality. And it was really, my friend did not intend to elicit that response. It was just how my heart reacted. And I went full feelings into Berserk. Little did I know that the first scene was Guts, our main character, copulating with a woman who turns into a monster that he then kills. I mean, that was, what an opening. What an opening. So, so I guess I'll start with, summarizing the events, and I'll kind of, I guess I'll tell you as I go along, how I feel. I felt like, because, so, first Guts is having an intimate moment and then turns into something else. And I really felt like that set the tone of like, this is dark fantasy. Like we are in, you have just jumped into a world of dark fantasy. And very quickly, do we move on from that scene to, I believe, let me see my notes. Yeah, we move on rather quickly from this moment that Guts is having, which, and like, then he goes into a bar, a swordsman walks into a bar. That could be a joke, the beginning of a joke that I don't want to hear the rest of. And he ends up unintentionally freeing this little elf called Puck. And again, it's sort of like everything is very explicit. I'm like, how do I say it? It's very, very explicit because Puck is an elf, but without any clothes. Like, we see Elf's little bottom all the time. And Elf flutters around. And because the elf Puck, the elf's name is Puck. I don't know if I said that already. I probably did. So Puck is like fluttering around Guts, and he decides that, Puck decides that I just assume that it's a he. Puck is a he. That Puck decides that he wants to be Guts' friend. And because, like, Guts saved Puck's life. But Guts comes off as hard, like, as in, like, grr, arg. Well, also, I guess in that very first scene, I think, there is this massive, like, Guts, it has this massive sword. Like, the sword is the size of him, if not bigger. Like, it's huge. And he wields this massive sword. It's very clear that the sword is very powerful. And Guts very much unintentionally saves Puck's life. And it is Puck's decision to continue to be a companion of Guts, because Guts' response to Puck is just like, grunt, grr, arg, I'm just here on a mission, but maybe not a mission, like, I'm just here for blood's death and destruction, because we don't know much about Guts. And also, so kind of around this same time, or like following this scene of Guts freeing Puck through death, destruction, and victory, Guts gets imprisoned. And so in this imprisonment, Guts has this dream, and it's like this dream of him being chased by this, like, I would say it's like a cross between a worm and a goblin that got mixed up in a blender, and that creature is chasing Guts. And it is somehow connected with the tattoo on Guts' neck, which was like a branding. So you get this feeling that Guts is cursed, or that he's cursed, isolated, and alone in the world, and somehow on some sort of like bloody mission, And then we have like a small bit of light with Puck flying around, being all magical and cute and sweet. So yeah, I think that's like a good summary of like book one. Yeah, I think so. So pretty quickly, it gets set up that our villain, our bad person, at least in this beginning section, is the Count. And the Count is pretty evil. You're like, okay. And I think we really get a lot of reveal. We learn more about the Count when we meet this, this person named Vargas. Vargas is, you know, he's like a disfigured man, and so in his reveal, Vargas's reveal about his interaction with the Count, we realize that the Count murdered Vargas's family in front of Vargas's very eyes. And through that, I believe Vargas reveals that he has this magical thing, which looks like a face. I think it's called the beherit. It's the beherit, which he stole from the Count. And he has this thing, and I don't think he's ever learned how it works. Vargas has never learned how it works. And Vargas's backstory, I think, you know, again, reveals like the darkness of the world and just how evil the Count is. But interestingly, it's like only because the Black Swordsman, or is it the Black Swordsman? Yes. Only because the Black Swordsman is fighting the Count and the Count's people do we realize that the Black Swordsman must be like a good guy, for a lack of a better term, because he's fighting the bad guys. Like, that's the only reason why. Because for the most part, Guts is pretty silent. Like, he's just out there fighting people with his massive sword. And so when he, like, for, again, sort of lack of a better term, he stumbles upon Vargas, and I think Puck is asking the questions. I'd have to like go back and look for sure. And Vargas reveals more about what happened to he himself and his family, and the like evilness that the Count is. Do we realize that like it's becoming more and more clear that the Black Swordsman is on the good side, and the Count is like the counter opposite, on being the bad person. And then we know that there's like this magical device, the beherit. I feel like I'm saying that really wrong. Maybe there's a pronunciation in here. Maybe I don't want to look it up so I don't spoil myself. Amid sort of this conversation with Vargas, the reader, I realized sort of the extent, at least the beginning of the Count's evilness, because he is able to possess or to like demonize and weaponize one of his guardsmen named Zondark. And through that, it's like, I mean, it's just all like dark fantasy stuff. So Zondark is out there like trying to find the Black Swordsman, and he's like super hard to kill because like if you like cut off his arm, it'll regrow and like become stronger than ever, but through almost like a Medusa style, not Medusa, but it's just like, it's almost like this like snake-like ugly, you know, slug mixed with dark magic in a blender, and it's just like all craziness. Like, I don't know. I don't really talk about stuff like this. So Zondark is now like possessed, for lack of a better term. I don't know. I don't read a lot of dark fantasy, but he's possessed, and it is because of Zondark that Vargas gets captured, and through a series of events, Guts gets taken away, or it escapes the whole ordeal. So now Vargas is going to be executed, and I don't know what's happening. Oh yeah, another reveal about sort of the darkness of this world is that as Vargas is about to be executed, beheaded, you know, Puck is the one that's like, don't you want to save or do something? Guts, like, why don't you just go over there and sort of save him? And Guts is very ambivalent about that, like ambivalent about Vargas's death, even though it is very clear that Vargas is not a bad person. And actually, like, essentially, you would think that Vargas and the Black Swordsman are on the same team, because Vargas has this beherit thing, this, like, magical thing that is, you know, obviously means something and is worth something. And it's already been set up that it doesn't like the Count because of what the Count has done to Vargas in his life. And so as Vargas is about to die and be beheaded, like, Puck is the one that's like, why don't you intervene? Like, you have this, you know, you're powerful, you're good at fighting, like, why don't you intervene? And the Black Swordsman is like very ambivalent about it. And so, you're kind of like, what is up with this dude? Like, you're obviously like a good guy, but like, I don't know if you're actually a good guy because maybe they're just both bad guys. Like, I don't know. Wouldn't you want to like save an innocent soul? But instead he's just like, meh. And so, Puck ends up intervening, and Puck ends up getting captured by the Count's men. And then the story takes like an interesting left turn. So the interesting left turn, at least in my opinion, is when we meet Teresa, because Teresa who is the Count's daughter. She's a young lady. I don't really know. I know she's been sort of, imprisoned away for 7 years. I would say that she's like anywhere between 12 and 14 or something, something like that. And so she's been sort of hidden away, and she doesn't have any company, and she ends up talking with Puck, and their interaction is quite sweet. And what Teresa ends up revealing is that her father is essentially so protective of her that he keeps her, hidden and she's like only in this situation because her father is so protective of her and so wants to just keep her safe. And up until now, as a reader, I thought that, the Count is pure evil and that he's just terrible. But then, you realize that he does have a daughter, and that maybe there is another side to the Count, and that he is a bit more complex than one would have initially realized. Okay, so amid all of this, the Beherit, it ends up the Count activates it. It's like, it looks like a Picasso, a three-dimensional sculptural Picasso-like face. And the Count ends up activating it, which opens the world up to like another dimension. And there are these, what look like, I'm guessing they're like almost like demigods, like godlike people. And so, and it's called, he summons the God Hand. So it's really like this other world. I did not expect that, but it was like another dimension, another world. And there we meet someone named Griffith or Femento, and Griffith and Guts have some sort of past. So it's like, whoa, well, that got interesting. And actually, we realize that the Count was actually not a bad guy at the beginning. He really loved his wife. His wife was very pious and innocent. He really loved his daughter. And then one day, he like stumbles upon, or he comes home, and his wife is, what, I don't know how to describe this, and like, she is participating in a group activity of lovemaking, and he is so furious and heartbroken. The Count is. He's so furious and heartbroken and like aghast at his wife that it's like he goes berserk. And he offers his wife up as a sacrifice, which turns him into a demigod himself. Like but he's not quite there. He has these powers, and it gives him it gives him like powers beyond any normal person. The Beherit, or the sculptural thing that I feel like I'm saying wrong constantly, is like a representation of his intense sorrow and emotion. And it's like he gets through the first stage of this eternal godlike power to make himself a demigod, but he's not quite there yet. And so he activates the Beherit, goodness. And, and so this other world opens up, and there's these other demigods, one of which Guts knows, and they're like, do you want to like basically complete your transition to being an all-powerful being? But in order to do that, you need to sacrifice your daughter, and give her up. And, so then it's like and then now it's like, okay, well, he's not a completely evil person. And actually all of this comes about after this battle that Guts has with the Count. trying to kill him, and he ends up cutting off the Count's head, but the Count is still alive, but like bodiless, you know? And so they're like in this other dimension sort of talking about their options, which is interesting. And Teresa's there and they're like, just sacrifice your daughter and then you'll have these powers. And the Count doesn't do it, you know? And his like soul or his essence being person ends up going to a place that is, you know, in like my, you know, in my reality would be like a hell-like place. Oh yeah, and Guts is like almost dragged down into like the abyss, the hell-like place. Guts is almost taken there himself, but he ends up, you know, using his like blaster arm to like get away. And then you know, he gets returned to like not the other dimension, but like the actual world. He ends up, even though he saves Teresa, or, you know, he saves her from sort of like semi-suicidal moment. It's very dark. You know, I'm kind of reading it like one eye. I'm like Guts, you know, with the one eye. I'm like squinted one eye and I'm like, you know, swiping the pages. I'm like, what is happening? So he ends up, you know, saving Teresa's life from her own suicidal thoughts, but then she vows to enact revenge on the Swordsman for her father. It's sort of like once the Count made that final decision, it was like everything was over and everything sort of gets, and you know, Guts blasts from you know, he saves himself from the abyss. It's like everything goes back to normal. And then, you know, Teresa declares that she will get revenge for her father. And, you know, there's no more other dimension. And yeah, and it's interesting because it ends with Guts being upset at this like declaration. So you're like, does this man actually have feelings? What is going on with him? And so, you know, that is my summary and some of my thoughts about it. I don't know how entertaining that was, but you know, a lot of you are like, it's super dark. It's so dark. And I guess I'm sort of reading it. I'm intrigued by it as if I was reading a horror book or like watching a horror. I don't watch TV. So, you know, it's like when I'm watching horror something or other, you know, I think that people who watch horror people out there of the world, when you were watching it, I think that there's like kind of a thrill and an excitement of being scared, of like giving yourself a little scare. And there's like, you kind of want to keep going, or like you enjoy that feeling, and so you're willing to keep going or like continuing to watch scary things because, you know, like it's kind of fun to bring yourself to like that edge of being like, oh, it's so dark and scary. I cannot do that with horror films or television shows. Like it will give me nightmares. Like it will truly give me nightmares to watch scary things, like visual, because of the music and the suspense and the building of the suspense. And like, I just get so hooked and I'm so sensitive that when I am watching something scary, like it will really get in and amongst me and I won't sleep and I'll be grumpy for days on end and, you know, all of that stuff. But with Berserk, it's kind of giving me that same feeling, but on like a very low level, because I don't go to sleep like getting nightmares from it. But it's also giving me that same like sort of thrill or excitement or like what's going to happen next. And a lot of what I'm seeing right now is world building, essentially. Like, you know, even with like the opening up of another dimension and we're meeting another person that Guts knows. And even with like the Count, it's like not everything is evil because even he wasn't pure evil. You know, it's like, it's layered and it has dimension to it, literally with other dimensions, but it actually has like depth to it. And so, you know, even when there are moments where it's just like, you meet someone and then like they basically immediately die, I'm like, I think that to me, it's all part of the world building. It's like every, you know, there's this possibility, or there's this known sense that like peril is all around us. Anyone can die at any moment. And you know, you're looking for something deeper. Like, what are the deeper themes to it all? I don't know yet. I don't really know. I'm kind of lost. It's very different from what I actually read, but I do find it like weirdly intriguing. And the things that bother me, I just literally move on super quickly. Like I will get what it's doing and then I turn the page and I'm like, ah, you know, and then it deletes from my brain. Like I'm like it, you know, it's gone kind of. Like I'm not letting it sit and get in amongst me, which is probably why this kind of horror fantasy, dark fantasy is working for me more than an actual like horror movie or film or production that you see and there's like all these effects to it. So yeah, I don't know. I'm wondering what's going to happen and where it's going to go. I am probably reading too many manga series right now because I probably won't be able to keep up this pace with all of the things. And I really want to get back to my first love, which is One Piece. So, you know, I don't know, but I'm curious. Like I'm curious as to where it's going to go. And maybe it is the fact that it's so like dark and like it's so dark that it's keeping my attention, which is interesting. Usually it would sort of put me off to it, but the darkness is what I'm like, where are you gonna go now? And I feel like, you know, it's one of those things that's always going to be pushing the envelope. And I think that if one took it too seriously, it would be really dark, really like too dark for a lot of people. So, you know, this is more of my maybe you ought, don't do what I did and just be like, how dare you say I can't handle it, and then like go off and read it. You know, maybe actually do a little bit of research as to whether this is something for you or not. It's like pretty dark. I think I said that about 1,000 times. I'm gonna go. So, you know, thank you. Tell me what you think of this video, thoughts, the first arc of Berserk down below. I really appreciate it. But yeah, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for spending this time with me. I really appreciate it. And I will see you all in my next one. Bye.